One of the key points of Al-Ghazali, Imam Al-Ghazali, had been, well, we can sum it up. If we look at the entire life, the entire book of what he is, what will save you or give you salvation. That's it. That's the knowledge you require. Everything else is superfluous. Everything else is something that is over and beyond, which will enter into the worlds of manfa'at or benefits, then they can get some benefits out of it, all things which you will get some enjoyments out of that. So this idea of manfa' and tahsiniyat, ideas of benefits and ornamentations and some enjoyment that actually comes out of that, comes in that. To the extent where he also clarified, which is a principle within the entire corpus of Islamic knowledge, is that whilst fard al-ain is important, you should focus on that kind of fard al-ain which is important for you to function as a human being. So, if you're never going to trade, which is impossible because you have to trade every single day, then you shouldn't have to worry about trading. Remember, in Islam, fara'idul ain, the obligatory knowledge, personal obligatory knowledge, becomes obligatory on you at the moment that you are going to engage in it. At the moment you engage in it. So, for example, technically speaking, you don't have to know anything about marriage until you decide to get married. Obviously, the reality tells us, common sense tells us, that well, before you decide to get married, which will be a common thing that human beings will do, that you will go and seek that knowledge. Is that making sense? Mm-hmm. So it's not as if, well, I'm going to get married tomorrow, so I'm going to have a crash course today. It means that you still go and seek that kind of knowledge that is required for you to function as a human being. But over and beyond that, literally all the other bits and pieces of knowledge is either ornamentation, or more profoundly, just simply extraneous, superfluous. And I know we've got a couple of IT people over here. I always question IT people. You know, what do you actually do that brings about human benefit? And I know that IT people bring a lot of human benefit because Islam Online would not function if they were not IT people. They totally understand that. But today we're going to look at, is it as a matter of simply working 9 to 5 and getting some website up? I'm not picking on the IT people. It's just, I mean, sometimes I'm picking on lawyers and sometimes others and architects as well. All of those. What do you exactly do that you can say that this qualifies as service to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That's the critical thing we want to be looking at today. Because 9 to 5 job is purely a means. And in that are few things as means. One is obviously halal earning. But remember, we looked at this before. We reduce this halal earning as the end of it all. Right? I'm still earning my halal earning. And the day you're about to die is when you go, oops, I think I was supposed to do a few other things as well. And that's the real message about him. And he makes it clear that you're going to die, isn't it? The issue of death is just so important. Because if you don't realize you're going to die, then this idea that all of these bits and pieces of knowledge in terms of our ashghal, of our preoccupation, it becomes useless. And the last thing he basically tells us is basically that what is called as the eightfold way, and it simply includes what you should leave and what you should adhere to. We live in a time which is unfortunate in many ways. It's a time of great opportunity, but it's also a time of great misfortune if you don't take the opportunity. What do I mean by that? You see, in traditional times, when we were talking about the great Ibn Battuta, when we're speaking about the great Imam al-Ghazali, when we're speaking about the great Ibn Haytham, etc., etc. Al-Razi, Imam Shafi, Imam Abu Hanifa, Ibn Taymiyyah, Imam Nawawi, etc. The paradigm of knowledge seeking was exactly this. The important reason to bring that up is this. In those times, before I say this, all that I said so far can start to sound like that I'm somehow advocating for this kind of a ghetto mentality Muslim who sits at home and does Allah, 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 does nothing else kind of attitude. No, I'm definitely not saying that. We need our IT people, we need our doctors, and we need our lawyers. But you see, those times when they had these things as their priority, as the basis by which they functioned, Muslims had the best doctors, Muslims had the best lawyers, Muslims had the best physicians, Muslims had the best astronomers, etc. Why? Because all of those material sciences were purely a means to fulfill all of this. Allah. Purely a means to be able to do so. Today it's not like that at all. Today people are working 9 to 5. The fact that you are working and there are people who need your assistance, but you can't leave your work. That you can't leave your work is a problem. Is a problem. If you can leave your work, you can tell your boss, sorry mate, somebody needs my help, I'm going to sort that out. I'm not talking about help because somebody fell off the gutter on the curbside, okay? I'm talking about some pretty deep problems. Why is it that Sidney Ahmed is not here? And just to clarify, because I'm getting myself in deep ends of people completely sometimes misunderstanding someone like myself. I'm only talking about Al-Ghazali seminaries because I'm just using that as an example of my own experience, and I know that other people do great work as well. Why is it that someone like Sidney Ahmed Baghdadi, who runs the Crescent Project, or what we call the Ansar Project, on the Sunday afternoon is looking for a Muslim to come and serve poor people? Why? Because we are busy earning a living or having a barbecue with our family, and we think that's more important. That's the problem. But we don't realize that the more you function in this world of urgencies, of this material urgencies, the very thing that we're crying for, our spiritual liberation, is not going to come. But when you work for spiritual liberation, all of these material ornamentations will definitely come. Those who are literally busy with the work of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're a means. Okay? Just like the banks of a river is a means by which the river flows, you're a means to get the work of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala done. And when you don't do that, then all the other bits and pieces that you like doing, enjoy in your material world, is going to be an obstacle and a problem. And we need to turn the paradigm around. We really need to turn our paradigm around. Yeah, I was amazed. I met a Buddhist. He's a medical practitioner when I was at the parliament, and he required that 2 of his times changed. This is the parliament of the world's religions. They don't change things for anybody, right? Because they've got a line of other speakers who are very happy to take the spot for anybody else who would want it. And this guy is not a known person. But those 2 times were his meditation times. And he needed the time changed. And you know what? They changed the time for him. And guess what? We Muslims were struggling to get our Jummah sorted out. We as Muslims were struggling as a community, forget about one unknown Buddhist, struggling to get our Jum'ah sorted out. It got sorted out, it was placed, the problems around it, putting all of that aside, but we had a problem. It should tell us a lot. It really should tell us a lot. And so I'm going to look at those things we need to take into account to actually change our state. Not about the world out there, but ourselves. But the great thing is when you change yourself, the world changes with you. You try and change the world without changing yourself, you will wreck yourself. As Sheikh Nu says, you'll break your back. The change is not out there, the change is you. Do you think the world just basically is disintegrating because of other people? Because of other things? No, it's because of us. And yes, maybe you are not the one who is directly connected to any kind of an annihilation or degradation, but you still have some part to play in all that. And as a Muslim, we have a significant part to play. And the idea that the reason why I go on harping on about all of this is because what was all of this actually hinged on? And that was hinged on beneficial action, isn't it? He kept on saying that. He kept on saying, I mean, this act here is to act upon it. But I'm not talking about acting upon the knowledge of God. I'm talking about getting involved in beneficial action. For us to be able to be involved in that which is going to bring about change. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says when we are talking about Amr bil Ma'ruf. When we're talking about Ma'ruf, another word which is so terribly translated into English that now has become the standard and the norm. How is it translated? When we say Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar, how is that translated? How do we understand that? Anybody? Quick statement about that. And forbidding what is? Evil. That's right, yes, yeah. Enjoining what is good and forbidding what is evil. Yeah, that's a good way to actually say it, and it's probably catching the entire idea. But if you go to the translations of the Quran, enjoining is a new word for us. We like to say enjoining because guess what it says in the Quran in the translations in English? Commanding the good and forbidding the evil. That's what it says. Now, there is a part and parcel of that job that does happen in the Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. But I can assure you, you can actually go to the Mufassirin and you see what is said about this. Particularly in Surah Al-Baqarah, in the verse of Ummatul Wasata, where Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is referred to. You know that he is obviously the witness upon all of us, and he is the one who actually, by which Ya'muru bil Ma'ruf, actually he's being told actually that he actually does. What is the translation of this? What is the commentary of this? What's the interpretation of this? Is to actually be enjoining or being see, Amr is an interesting word, but whenever you actually enter into word semantics, you can actually have a problem. So I'm going to quickly sum up something over here. The word here is meaning to actually enjoin, encourage, motivate, and make it happen yourself. That's the capture of the word of Amr. Amr can also mean command. It can actually mean that, but it's a side point in the entire equation of Amr, right? And bil ma'ruf, this is the important point. Does anybody know what's the root word of this word? Arufa. What does arufa mean? No. He knew. He knew something. Now ma'ruf, it's in the majhul form, right? Its meaning is that which is understood. That which is known. This is not me making it up. I'm not trying to give any philosophical understanding of this word. It's not about doing good and forbidding evil, or commanding good and forbidding evil. It's about calling in yourself what's already in there. You already know what's known to be good. Is that making sense? Mm-hmm. You already know this. You don't need some big sage or some big sheikh to come and tell you, go and feed the poor people. Go and provide accommodation for people who can't have accommodation. Go and advocate for social justice. Go and make sure that ethics is what comes out of the work that you do. This is known by people. This is known inherently in ourselves. This is the nature of fitrah. So when we are having to be told about this in our Muslim state, you can imagine how sleepy we are. You can imagine how deep in a sleep we are, that we have to be reminded to be awakened to these very basic human qualities. Even if you look at the word munkar, it's not evil. It's not connected to sayyat. It's not connected to su. But it's a byproduct of what, when people involve in themselves in munkar, come about. It's not the meaning. What's the meaning of the word? The word munkar comes from the root word nakira. So in Arabic, so in English, what do we call this? So what's that? What kind of article is that? It's an indefinite article. And what is this one here? It's the definite article, right? So in Arabic we have a similar kind of situation. So I can say, for example, I'll say bait. So baytun, this is, our house. And this is called an-nakira, the not known. It's the general, the indefinite. So an-nahy anil munkar is to stop from entering into which is not known to human nature, that is strange to human nature. And what's that strangeness? Evil, doing stupid stuff. That's the reason why when you even women are probably far more attuned to this than men, but maybe it's because I'm desensitized, and that's the reason why. So you can correct me if I'm wrong in this whole thing. Well, when you ask males or females to tell even a small white lie, it seems for men it's very easy to tell a white lie. But women tend to, they feel very hesitant about it. I don't know, this is just my experience. Maybe I'm meeting the wrong men and the right women, I don't know. But what I'm saying is that there is something in ourselves that call, I don't want to do that, right? I'll give an example, I'm not talking about deep, serious lies. I'm just talking about a very, very simple. You call in the morning and say, you call your boss and say, I'm sick. You're just taking the day off, that's what you're doing. When you do that, at that moment you feel a little bit of guilt. This is nakira in ourselves. It's just strange for us to actually do that kind of stuff. Yes, what it is. That's what's calling from inside yourself. Come on, you shouldn't be doing that. Right? So that's at the simplest level. But when you get into a more complex level, when we are in a state of denial, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ? Which of the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will you continue to deny? I was asked the question, there was a presentation I had to do in the parliament which was about compassion. And we were asked to actually speak about compassion. And there were many religious organizations and people who spoke of compassion. And this idea of compassion was connected to climate change, compassion and climate change. That was the idea. And this continued. I did, I think, 4 different sessions on compassion and climate change on different topics connected to all of that. And this continued idea that somehow we are the ones who are compassionate towards the plants and animals, that we shouldn't damage it, is actually part of our sleeping, part of our real problem, that we truly don't understand what compassion is. If we start from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the source of, the most merciful, the one who gives mercy, and the one who is merciful, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, right? Then we have Rahman. Okay, so who can define for me Rahman? Somebody tell me. Tell me, what do you think is compassion? Kindness is a good word, yeah, to show kindness to other people. It might actually have some subsets to describe it, right? Yeah, kindness, yeah. Oh, there you go. MashaAllah, you're too kind to each other.
Is it when you feel that you would not say
empathy.
Yeah, empathy.
Having empathy, yeah. Anyone else? Well, you've never sat down and think about what Rahma is?
Mercy?
Tonight, go sit down and reflect on Ar-Rahim and Rahman. Spend half an hour, please, and define this word for you. If you don't count in mercy, yes? Well, we get the gist, right? Kindness, having empathy towards other people, having a station where you are not going to hurt somebody else. Affection, love, are all ideas that actually come from this idea of compassion. But you see, as I speak of all of that, and as we have shared all of that, it's always outward, isn't it? I'm empathetic to somebody else. I show affection to somebody else. I'm kind to somebody else. And yeah, potentially somebody else who's kind to me. But you see, it's still somebody. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Latif. He is the subtle one. And do you not realize that the subtlety of His compassion comes in so many ways? Let me give you some example. And this is the reason why when we start to think compassion as a living thing in ourselves and not a living thing in non-living things, we've got a problem. Let me explain. When you pick that apple from a tree, is not the tree compassionate towards you? When you drink that glass of water, wasn't the spring from which the water came was compassionate to you? See, the compassion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is everywhere. But you need to be aware and conscious of this. We can't be sleeping. Sorry, somebody put their hand up here? No? So, the idea here is that when you enter into beneficial action, into this kind of ma'aruf, you will realize, obviously there are many other matters that actually come out of all of this. To understand someone is compassion, absolutely, that's right, yes. But that's now invalid. No, just kidding. So this idea of ma'aruf, this idea of entering into beneficial action, Imam al-Ghazali's idea of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through our adhkar and through death, that we will die, actually then awakens us to the reality of situations beyond ourselves. That you no longer are concerned about my compassion or your compassion, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's compassion. It was never my compassion in the first place. Okay, I was simply the means by which that matter will come about, by what somebody else will actually function. So that's the message that he is looking at in the entire corpus of his very small book, mashallah, but extremely profound. When we come back from the break for Sydney and Newcastle, I think, Sydney and Newcastle, for Salah, for Maghrib, can we quickly go and pray Maghrib and come back, inshallah? And when we come back, until if Adelaide and Melbourne can confirm what time is their Maghrib, it'll be useful.